to review? You did? You did not? Shucks.
Rabbi, you mentioned yesterday, and I just said the day before, when you were talking about the idea of seeing it, recognizing Hashem like sight,
Right.
essential sight, and you said that there's a special quality to that to sight rather than all of the other senses. What was it? Was it the idea that with sight that you don't have to come in contact with the thing, that you can, without affecting it at all, you can completely you can experience something without it having any effect on you and you having an effect on it. That was the idea.
Well, that's. I'm glad you won this. This is a very important Indian. That indicates that the sense of sight is of a different caliber and different quality than all other senses. And when we think further and we say, what type of sense is it? What am I sensing if I'm not being affected by it? In every sense, I'm affected, so I know what am I sensing. I'm sensing how the effect of this object onto me. Inside there is no effect on me. So therefore, what am I sensing? I'm sensing the object the way the object is in truth unto itself, not how it affects me. This is where the sight, we say sight gives us the reality. Because in fact it gives us the reality. It's not a relative thing, how it affects me. This is where I see that this is a real thing. Unto itself. So to know Elokus, let's proceed this a little bit, to know Elokus at that level means not knowing Elokus just from the perspective that there's a world, it has to come from someplace, there has to be a creator. That's not knowing Elokus from its own perspective. That's knowing Elokus how it affects the world, how it affects me. That's not the real knowledge. There is the capacity, there is this Inyan Hadas, which is a special, absolutely, we can recognize how special a quality that is. That we can know and recognize and relate to Elokus the way Elokus is, in truth. Not the way because it affects me. This is Pshat B'derech B'riyah Chushis. Okay, you're welcome. I'm new to meet him here. Anybody else have anything to say about last year? You reviewed it a little bit. Had a chance to review it. So this Inyan, we are going to start from, it's about, well, let's see, it's 8 lines from the bottom of this page. The line begins with the word Shabahem. The copy doesn't work?
Yeah.
That's not. We have one sefer of this? Huh? Topshin Ches. So, this type of recognition in the Lakus, that's called Re'iyah, Chushis. Now it's recognizing godliness as a reality, not only as something that affects me. This comes to the person. That faculty, that quality in the person is revealed as a result of nisyonis. That's when it becomes real. Which is a tremendous contrast to saying, I better obey, I better listen to what the Torah says, otherwise I'm going to get punished. That's a world apart. That means that you don't really understand what the Torah is about. You're just concerned about yourself. Whereas in this, there's a cognizance, a real cognizance of the truth of Hashem and the Torah. That comes as a result of these things. Maybe you should join in for the. You should join as share. No, okay. So why don't you join in? What is this? Topshin Vav, Topshin Hey, Topshin. No. Oh wait, Topshin Ches. I don't know if it has. Unless you say Barasichs. Okay. All right, so you be together. All right, so we're starting now from the line that begins with the word Shabahem. That's, 8 lines. Oh, look at this. Terrific. Okay, very good. Okay. The line begins with Shabahem. So, we started off this paragraph, this ois, it's called, where the Rebbe said that in order to get Hakara Be'elokus, this recognition in the truth of Elokus, which is called Das, that's only as a result of avodah that comes through nisyonos. Because he goes on to explain that there are two types of avodas, two levels of engagement that a person has in this world. One, engagement, challenge. No. Engagement means that he is fighting, so to speak, is trying to change his view of the world. One is called birur, and one is called nisoyin. And he explained the birur first. Birur means that we get directly involved with the object that we are mevarer. Like, for instance, if a person eats l'shem shomayim, and he eats exclusively kosher, which means he is discriminant because he wants to eat only that which is appropriate to be eaten, api Torah, and he eats l'shem shomayim in the proper way, he is then mevarer the nitzutzis, is mevarer the holiness that is mevarer, means he reveals the holiness that is contained in this food. Because when you look at the food firsthand, you say, what's the difference how I eat it? And what's the difference when I eat? That's how the world presents itself. What's the difference? It's just food that exists, so to speak, in the wild. Now it's purposelessly. And when I eat it in a discriminant way, in a proper way, that means that clearly I give recognition that no, not so. The food is not just in the wild. The food is there for a purpose. And if I fulfill that purpose, then I'm showing that this is what the food is created for. And if I don't, then I'm descending into the world where the kedusha is concealed. So by birur, by getting involved with the world, and then using the world in a proper way, that is a birur. This is when you reveal the kedusha that is contained in the world. We know, just to add on to what we already discussed, we know that eating, which seems to be a perfectly natural activity, and yet eating in the Torah is a mitzvah. Under certain circumstances, it's not only a permissible mitzvah, but it's required. Shabbos, for instance, Shabbos, it's a mitzvah to eat. What's behind it? Because eating, when we eat, it isn't only to satisfy one's hunger, and it isn't, surely it is not to satisfy one's desire. As we pointed out sometimes before, that when God created the human being, the Adam Rishon, He gave to Adam the entire world. And He told him that I'm giving you this world, I created it for you. I'm giving it to you so that you, with your engagement, with your involvement with the world, would elevate the world and would make the world what we call, what we say, a humanized world, a meaningful world. Not just a wild, meaningless, purposeless entity. Everything in the world ultimately has to be transformed to a meaningful, to a human quality. By eating the food, we are clearly declaring that this food is meant intentionally by Hashem to be food, to teach, to feed human beings, to feed it, in order that they should be able to continue in their work of Torah mitzvahs. Thereby we elevate the whole world. So that when we reflect on this, we see that anything that a person does, even in the most natural thing like eating, a person can be elevating the food and thereby elevating himself, or God forbid, he can lower the food and lower himself. If it is done, if he, so to speak, succumbs means he seeks the food becomes something that he seeks for its own sake, then he becomes at the level of the food. If he takes the food in order to elevate it and to feed him so that he will have the strength to do Torah, then the food is elevated to his level. That's essentially what happens. Okay, now we continue. Okay. I'm sorry? Umaso umaton. Maso umaton means conducting business, interaction of business. The word maso umaton are two words. Maso means to take, umaton to give. That's how business is conducted. Interaction, give and take. Okay, I'm continuing further. Ma shein kein b'nisoyon, where this is different in the case of the avodah of nisoyon. Hine, so there, oifen habirur hu, the manner of birur, the manner of purifying and elevating that which is contained in nisoyon, is loy b'hisaskus boy. It is not by engaging and by getting involved with the object itself. Loy b'hisaskus boy. If, say, the simplest case, illustration of a nisayon, if a guy comes and he says, I'm not going to let you put on film, I'm not going to let you eat kosher, I'm not going to let you keep Shabbos, you're not going to stand up there and engage the guy and say, why not? Shabbos is a wonderful thing, don't you understand? This is beyond that. That it has nothing to do with it. There's no way this is not going to go. How do we deal with it? It's in a completely different way. Not to his salskus, not to being involved with the object that needs to be nisbar. Kiim, rather, aved as hanisoyin, who the aved of nisoyin consists in his askus ha'odom im atzmoy. But a person has to work with himself. That's what nisoyin is. Nisoyin is that he has to work with himself. He has to find the strength within himself to overcome the challenge, the difficulty. That's what nisoyin is. The hanisoyin, the reason for that is because nisoyin einoi dover mitzad atzmoy. Nisoyin is not a thing in and of itself. In a few more words, and I'll explain what that means. Nisoyin is not a thing of itself. Rak only Shehumad dover. Shehumad. Humad means was placed, put. Something was put up. Humad dover. Something was put up. Lahalim v'limnoya. To conceal. Lahalim means to conceal. V'limnoya, and to obstruct. We have to understand, in principle, and then we'll get to the point. In principle, we have to understand that even though the world is a physical world, and godliness is concealed, contained within the physical seal, container, but there's nothing in the world as such, as Hashem created it, that should oppose Hashem. Oppose, be against. Nothing in the world that should be against. There is not a single mitzvah in the Torah that is opposite than the nature of the world. Surely the world will not support it. It doesn't call for it. It doesn't say you must act this way. But if we eat kosher food, we don't eat non-kosher food. There's nothing wrong with it from a perspective, from a natural perspective. And the same thing goes about every mitzvah in the Torah. Surely it is demanding, and it tells you what to do and so forth, but it's not that that there is something in the world that opposes it. Even, let's say, the Torah says Shabbos is a day of rest. You're not allowed to work on Shabbos. But then there are 6 days in which you can work. And 6 days, the Torah says, is enough. And if you work the 6 days, this will give you what you need. There is one thing that seems to be going against the natural order, and that is Yom Kippur. Yom Kippur, you have to fast. And the fasting seems to be, naturally a person needs to eat. And Yom Kippur is one day in the year, and the person is actually required to fast. I mean, we have now more fasts, but that's because of the Churban and all that. But from the Torah, there's only one day in the year that is a fast day. So there's a saying. Someone once said that there are two fasts, two fast days when a person doesn't fast, and that's Tisha B'Av and Yom Kippur. The two major fasts, a person doesn't fast. What does it mean he doesn't fast? It means that Tisha B'Av, when a person reflects on what happened on Tisha B'Av, he can't eat. He just despises food. Thinking about the Churban, the Zamigdash, that's something which simply doesn't. He can't be hungry. He doesn't allow him to eat. So he doesn't have to fight with himself, so to speak. Yom Kippur, a person is altogether in a pure state, and is above, is in a higher state. He's in a pure state, and he is above having to eat. But okay, so this is.
By the law, we don't have to fast
By the Torah? No. It's only right. It's after the Chum. Some of the Rabban is from the Nevi'im. It's in the Tanakh, but it's not. The point is, Yom Kippur, yes, indeed, it's a fast, but number one, it's one day a year which certainly a person can sustain without any harm. And if in fact he is a person who can be harmed by the fast, he should not fast. In other words, there isn't anything in the Torah that is mamash saying again that the world says, no, you can't do it against. If there is a nisoyin that opposes and doesn't let you do a mitzvah in the Torah, that nisoyin is not a real presence. It's something which was put up intentionally by the Meibesh, intentionally to make it difficult for you. It's not something that you should engage, that you have to elevate. Food is meant to be elevated. And everything in the world is meant to be used and elevated. But nisoyin, that's what he says, it's not really a real thing. The Medrash tells us, this is of course a unique situation, but nevertheless, that illustrates what the real thing of Nisoyin is. The Medrash tells us a story. It tells us that Avram Avinu was going to the Akedah with Yitzchak, was taking Yitzchak to the Akedah. You know, he walked 3 days. So these 3 days were not smooth days. They were all kinds of obstacles came his way during these 3 days. And it says that on one time, the Sultan made water come in Avram's way, and Avram saw the water, and he knows that he has to go, so he continued going. As he's walking, the water was rising higher and higher. Avram continued going until, that's called Bo Maim Ad Nofesh, until the water reached his breathing, his nose, and that's when it receded. In other words, this whole thing of Nisoyin is only to bring out the strength within the person, not to succumb to it, not to give in. That's the whole purpose of it. Not that it's a real thing. If Hashem said you have to go there.
What happened when
It went down.
The water receded, went down.
How is this different from Mitzvahs Le'aseh? Like, is it the same idea, like the
Mitzvahs Lo Yisaseh?
Yeah.
Nothing in the Mitzvahs Lo Yisaseh that forces itself upon you.
So it's neutral. You just have a choice whether or not to.
Yeah, Shabbos, don't do Amloch on Shabbos. Is there anything that compels you to do Amloch? And Nisoyin is a special instance. It's a, so to speak, beyond the natural order of things, really. When it's set up, l'hatchila, for the purpose of challenging the person. And therefore, it's not. There's no point in engaging and getting involved with the nisoyin itself. Where are you coming from? Why are you doing this? That's completely out of line. I would say it means nothing. The inner of the nisoyin is to bring out the inner strength of the person to be able to stand up to it. V'rak, okay, we'll continue on. V'rak, only. Tzorich liyois his askus be'atzmai. There is a need for involving his askus. One has to work on himself. Lo'oireir. His askus, engaging, right, involving. Lo'oireir, to arouse or to awaken, to bring out. Koyach ho'atzmi. Koyach ho'atzmi, the force, koyach, the power of the essence of the neshama. Lamoid, to stand up, betoikiv, with strength and stubbornness. Neged kol moinaya, against any obstacle. This is the objective of an Yisrael. We can witness this, we can experience this. You have a question? We can, so to speak, see it in our own experience on the minor and smaller levels. Where when a person, when you wake up in the morning and you don't feel like getting up, there is nothing holding you back. You just don't feel you're tired, or you're lazy, or you like the warm bed. How do we counter this? We counter this. This is not something that you have to engage. You have to counter it by saying, no, I must get up. It's nothing to do with the bed is not the culprit. The fact that the bed is comfortable, that's not the culprit that stands in your way to getting up. It's not to blame. It's not responsible. You can't say, oh, the bed is too comfortable, and that's why I don't want to get up. You know what I'm saying? There's nobody there to blame. The whole idea is that one has to recognize in himself the responsibility, and they bring out in himself the responsibility and the sense of purpose, and saying, this is how it has to be. This is minimal comparison to Shachmonis and the Nisayonos that even went through. But this is our Nisayon. To do things right in our time is the same thing. To be on time and to whatever it is that we need to do. There is the part that we need to explain and be mevader, and then there is a part that we have to use our personal strength to go through. And nothing else will help. If a person seeks to always be in a comfortable way, not to challenge himself, and to do that which is pleasant. I want to do the right thing, but I always want to be in a pleasant situation. It's never going to happen. Because ultimately, the Eibishter is going to put obstacles in his way to bring out his real sense, his real essence. Because that's what makes him into a human being.
Is the Yetzer Hara never considered an obstacle in Messiah?
Yes, it is. The Yetzer Hara is an obstacle, is a Nisayon. Yes, of course. And that's what we say. And the Yetzer Hara is not a true entity. If the Yetzer Hara said, like I said in this small instance, right, my bed is too comfortable to get up. Who are you going to fight over here? What are you going to do? You're going to make the bed not comfortable? I mean, what is this about? There's nobody to blame. The idea is, Baruch Hashem, it's comfortable, and now get up and do your thing. There is in every person, everybody here is adults, one more, one less. Every person has to has what's called the koyach atzmi. Koyach atzmi, the strength of the person, the personal strength to do what is right. Not only because there's going to be consequences. If I don't get up, things are going to happen. No. I have to do that which is right because it's right. This is what brings the inner strength of a person out. Okay. V'yodua b'inyan habirurim. We know regarding the principle of birurim, sheheim b'derech milchama. Birurim, generally speaking, are conducted, are accomplished, are done, b'derech milchama, in a manner of milchama. There is always going to be a challenge, and it feels like you're fighting something. A milchama. What is a milchama? Milchama means a war. Now, if two armies come facing one another, there is no way that one army will say to the other and say, please let me go through. What do you mean, please let me go through? I'm here to stop you. I don't want you to go in there. So, what is the manner of milchama? You actually measure. You go force against force, and you eliminate the opposition. Eliminating the opposition does not necessarily mean that you eradicate, you wipe them out, you kill them all out. But they recognize that you are stronger than them until they give up. They say, okay, you win. But when they say you win, it's still b'derech milchama. In other words, you take over by force. Why do we need to resort to force? Why can't we negotiate? Why can't we just deal peacefully and respectfully? So, yes, indeed, among people who are friends, it is definitely the proper way is to deal with negotiation. But there's such thing as a true enemy. A true enemy is one who simply opposes you. It's not the question of there's no negotiation. So now let's consider this. If there's an enemy who opposes you, and you say, but I want peace, and you're not going to stand up and oppose him, what's going to happen?
He will see.
What's going to happen? At best, he is going to enslave you or subdue you and take you over and rule you. And if he really doesn't like you, he's just going to eliminate you. Because this is a true enemy. This is not something that we can live together. This exists within the person himself. This phenomenon of two opposing forces exists in the person himself. In other words, if a person should seek to satisfy every one of his desires, both coming from the body and from the soul, nefesh elokis and nefesh apamis, look forward, try to, seek means look for ways to satisfy every one of his desires. It will be impossible. Because they're actually two opposite forces. Therefore, it is in terms of the avodah in the person himself. There has to be an aspect of milchama. Now, one more point about milchama, and then we'll go further. In war, we know that war is a dangerous place. It's not only dangerous that since I'm engaging my enemy, I'll learn from his ways. I'm going to learn bad manners. That's not the danger of war. The danger of war is that the danger of being eliminated, of actually being killed among Islam. That's what, in other words, the very essence of the person is being threatened in war. Not just the quality of life. Therefore, when one finds, we don't realize it. Like I said before, if the Yetzer Hara, the Nefesh Abamis, comes to a person and says, it's too comfortable in the bed, stay and nothing is going to happen. We don't realize it. Nothing is going to happen. This can, God forbid, this can drown a person. This can destroy a person. Imagine if this is allowed to go on. Imagine a person allowing this to go on. After a while, he's going to get up at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. Nothing is going to push him out at 10. If he doesn't get up at 7 because it's too comfortable, who is going to guarantee that in a month later it's going to be 2 o'clock in the afternoon? In other words, this is a real opponent. It's not just, let's negotiate. I won't get up at 7, I'll get up at 7:15, get up at 7:30. No, it doesn't work that way. Because he doesn't know that he's not going to consent to 7:30 either. So if we do not bring out the force of the etzem, in other words, this is a fight for life. Even though it seems like a meaningless, small little thing. So what's the big deal? I get up at 7, I get up at 7:30. No. This is a fight for life. And if we don't bring in the force, the power of the essence, of the soul, of the real self, it's going to go to deteriorate in a continuous way. At some point in time, one will wake up and say, I'm getting up at 2 o'clock in the morning, something is wrong with me. My life is going to pot, I'm wasting my life. That's when he's going to wake up and say, I better start getting myself together. And then it becomes a real challenge. But that's how kind of describing experience. The point is that this is what we're talking about milchama. There has to be in a person a sense of the self, which means I am now standing in danger. It's a small thing, but you should know that this is a dangerous enemy. It's a mortal enemy. All he wants is that you should sleep another half hour. It's a mortal enemy. And you have to use the koyach atzmi. That's what milchama is. And that's what nisoyin is. You have to use the koyach of the essence. I'm fighting for my life. That's what he says here. Birurim sheim b'derech milchama. The namo apum charbo lichu. Nahamo, this is the Lashon Yimon. Nahamo means bread. Apum charba means on the sharp of a sword. Charba is a cherev, a sword. And apum means on the sharp of the sword. Lechu, you should eat. What does it mean? That when it comes to eating, one has to know that this is talking about the birurim, that if you give in to the Yetzer Hara and you indulge and you don't judge what you're going to eat and how you're going to eat, then it can drown you away. Everything that a person does, he has to use the sword, so to speak, and judge: is this bringing me life? Or is this bringing me the opposite of life? It's mit apum charba. V'haschol az milchama, and the starting point, the beginning of this milchama, hu bitfilo, is actually in tefillah, in davening. The beginning of the milchama is in davening. Where is it in davening that you have a milchama? The inyan ahu, where the inyan of tefillah is lahachlish koyach hanefesh habamis, to weaken. Lahachlish, to weaken koyach hanefesh habamis, the power of the nefesh habamis, v'lifoil bo habit. And to affect, lifoil means to affect, in the nefesh habamis, bo, in it, habit, the inyan of bit. He's going to discuss this, but I want to introduce this in a little bit. Yeah.
You said you want to make the Nefesh HaBahamis have bittul?
You have to bring people to the Nefesh HaBahamis. Live in Boa Bittul. As I said, this is going to be discussed in the Maimer, but I want to just give us a little perspective on the meaning of tefillah, davening. The union of tefillah, of davening, if we would compare it and contrast it to learning Torah. Davening and learning, these are the two major paths to Avodas Hashem. Learning, step back. These two inyanim of davening and learning are generally described as Milamaylo lamato, from above downwards. Torah is that which comes from above downwards. And tefillah is that which goes milamato lamayla, from down upwards. Now tefillah is milamato lamayla, from down upwards. And Torah is from above downwards. Briefly, what this means is that, I'm sorry? Briefly, short. What this means is like this. In Torah, we learn to understand the world, but not from a world perspective. We learn to understand Torah, the world, the way the Torah tells us to understand. But essentially, we're trying to understand what we have to do in our world but we are taught by Hashem, by the Torah, what we should do. But essentially, we are involved in understanding our own lives. This is what you should eat. This is what you should not eat. This is what you should do, not do. And so forth. Tefillah comes from bottom up. That means that in Tefillah, we are trying to recognize Hashem's presence only. That's what Tefillah, recognize, see, look for. In other words, in Tefillah, what we are doing in Tefillah is that we're taking the world and we are saying that which I see in the world is really not world. This is Hashem. Hashem made it. Huh? That's Tefillah. So, what happens there? This whole big world that the Nefesh Habahamis considers its place of its base, its stronghold. I have a big world and I want to enjoy it. And it comes in Tefillah, and we tell him, wait a second, you don't understand what this world's about. This is God's world, doesn't belong to you. This is Tefillah. And in general, Tefillah is that moment in a person's life where Hashem comes to reality in his mind. Like we said earlier when we talked about Re'iyah. He stands to Menasse, and the minimum he thinks he's davening to Hashem. He's standing in front of Hashem. Now it becomes real to him. It's not something that is distant. Oh, Hashem created the world, but now I have a world. He's turning to Hashem, to the Creator himself, and says, Hashem is a real thing. So that has the effect of softening up the Nefesh Habahamis, of weakening the Nefesh Habahamis. This is what we're going to explain. The beginning of this milchama is in Tefillah, and in Yonah its purpose is to weaken and soften up the Nefesh Habahamis, and to affect a beetle. That is, as we said before, the effect of milchama. What's a milchama? Milchama is to weaken your enemy, to soften him up, and that's what tefillah is. The zehu. How is this accomplished? How do we accomplish this in tefillah? Alidei, this is alidei ha-hisbonenus b'inyonim, by hisbonenus, by reflecting in such inyonim, koelu, inyonim, such inyonim, hashayochim lenefesh habamis. Hashayochim that are belong, that are shayach, that belong to the nefesh habamis. V'shagam hu, and that he too, meaning that the nefesh habam is also yovin as ho'inyan ho'eliki, should understand the godly inyan. This is the hisbon, this is the avodah of tefillah. To bring about, to get the nefesh habam is to agree and to recognize, to understand that even though you see a physical world, but to see that there is something godly about it. You should understand that the physical world, as you see it, there's something special about it. There's some godly quality to it. Say, for instance, we have rain and we have shine. We have different weathers and different seasons. So, without thinking, without reflecting, this is a natural thing, as they always explain it. What is the rain? Rain is water that rises from the sea. Why does it rise from the sea? Because the air is dry, and because of that, the water rises into the air. And then it goes up, higher up, and then it's what's called, it condenses. When it becomes cold, it condenses, it gets together, and then it comes down as rain. So that's the cycle. It's a natural, a perfectly natural thing. There's no miracle. But in tefillah, one reflects, and the nefesh habamis can also understand. Look, okay, you don't see a miracle in this, but take a look. Rain, as much as you say that it's a natural thing, but look what it does. Look what it does. It waters the ground. And as a result, everything can grow. As a result of that, we have clean water and so forth. So, even if you, in other words, even if you don't see the miracle in the cycle itself, but you could see the miracle, you could see that there is a godly purpose in what's happening. That inyan that the world should live and it should have a cycle that, and everything should rejuvenate on an ongoing basis, that's not a natural thing. That clearly has a meaning, has a purpose. So the nefesh habam is in his own abode, in his own place, in his own world. Is being explained and being shown that it's not all physical, and he has to respect, he has to recognize there is something greater going on than what he thinks. The same thing like we discussed yesterday, the day and night. Say, oh, it's a natural cycle. No, okay, natural cycle. But look what's happening. Look what that does. You think that the natural cycles of the sun and the moon, these bodies themselves have planned this, and this is how it happened accidentally, this wholesome cycle of day and night and seasons and all that. So that here even the behemoth, the Nefesh Abamis, the human Nefesh Abamis could see there's something miraculous, something special happening. That way the Nefesh Abamis ceases to be a behemoth. A behemoth doesn't care where things come from. A behemoth just, whatever it can eat, it eats. It doesn't care where it comes from. A human being does recognize what the significance of things. The Nefesh Abamis, the human Nefesh Abamis, has seichel. And you can explain to the Nefesh Abamis that you can't be blind to seeing that there is something really meaningful happening in the world. It's not just a physical phenomenon. And therefore, this way, the Nefesh Abamis ceases to be 100% of a behemoth. He becomes a little bit of a human behemoth. That was a behemoth with a little seichel. He can respect that something really happened. Okay, with this we will interrupt temporarily till next time.